Bonjour. Hope everybody's having a fantastic. Today's Thursday, I guess. Thursday evening here throughout the Mid-South. I am Meteorologist Eric Brill in for Chief Meteorologist Ron Childers. And yeah, we got some fun ahead of us. Well, fun's not the right way to word it, but we definitely have an event ahead of us here as far as Friday night into Saturday is concerned. I am not by myself, though. We got Lydia over here who's in charge and got everything going on here.
Hello.
Lydia, how's your Thursday been thus far?
It's been pretty good so far. How about yours?
You know, it's always an adventure. There is no doubt about that. It's always an adventure, especially with the weather that we have on tap here.
Yep.
I know some of the meetings that we had today, as far as kind of getting personnel lined up and things like that,
Yep.
seems like, you know,
Gearing up.
We're gearing up and ready to go here. It's just
Yep.
a matter of the calm before the storm, quite literally here. So
For sure. Why don't you tell us about it?
let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. So, as far as the weather goes here throughout the Mid-South, really, over the next 24 hours, I don't really think we're going to see that many issues. But once we start getting beyond that, that is when we could start to see some thunderstorms fire up, and well, that's when the adventures will begin here. We'll call it that. The first thing I do want you to do, though, severe weather prep. It's a good idea to have all this stuff on hand here and ready to go. Between the First Alert Weather app here, you want to make sure you have that downloaded and ready to go. If you have a NOAA radio, if you don't have a NOAA weather radio, definitely recommend you getting one. And just check it. Make sure it's in order and everything's working there as far as fresh batteries being within it. If you have any sort of outdoor items, say the kiddos have I wouldn't say a basketball, but a beach volleyball out there, one of those colorful ones. Good idea to deflate it, bring it on in. If you have any sort of Adirondack chairs around a fire pit, man, I'm envious of you. But definitely want to make sure you have those and bring those on in too, just because they could blow around. You don't want those to become your neighbors. The safety review plan, that's a big one here to review with your family. So, you know, we're keeping our fingers crossed here that we don't have too crazy of storms around the Mid-South. But reality is the possibility is there for us to see some. And I want you to make sure you have that plan on hand here with respect to your family. If you do get that tornado warning, kind of have an idea in the back of your head. What are you going to do? Plan it now so this way when the event happens, you can just, everybody knows where to go right away here. You want to make sure you put yourself in the interior of your house, as many walls between the outside world and yourself, and stay away from windows more than anything else. And if you have a two-story house, or if you live in an apartment building, say if you have a few floors, keep in mind what's above you. And obviously, if you're in an apartment, you don't necessarily know what the person above you, what they have there. But keep in mind what's above you. You don't want to be under a refrigerator. You don't want to be under something that's heavy. Because let's just say, unfortunately, if something happens and that comes through, goes without saying, you don't want a refrigerator falling, you know, on you and your family and whatnot. Good idea to have blankets on standby too, pillows, or any sort of helmet if you're able to. Just put that on over your head if you get that tornado warning around, so this way you are protected from the elements and yet again just things flying around. A good idea to have a pair of shoes on standby too, because if you're walking around, there's nails or jagged wood or just jagged edges of really anything that can obviously have issues too. And the last thing, just make sure you stay on top of our social media, different pages and whatnot here as far as what we got going on here. So let's get to the actual forecast here. So the Storm Prediction Center, they issue different weather risk here day over day, and they, for the most part, extend out to 3 days as far as when they have a marginal, a slight, an enhanced, a moderate, or a high risk. As far as Friday goes specifically, those areas that are within green, and you see that kind of really goes down to the Gulf Coast and starts to spread itself back to the north here, just to the west of Atlanta. That's a marginal risk or an isolated risk. The areas in yellow, that's where you start talking more about your slight risk. Looks like that includes Birmingham down to the south, I believe over towards Hattiesburg, and then off to the west more towards Little Rock. As far as this orange area, which does include the vast majority of the Mid-South, including specifically Memphis and Shelby County, that is where there is an enhanced risk of severe weather. And then finally to the north of us here, but it also does include all Dyer County as well as northern Lauderdale County and northern Mississippi County. That is where there is a moderate risk of severe weather here throughout the Mid-South. So up to the north is where that higher risk of severe weather is for Friday. The thing that's a little unorthodox about this severe weather risk, though, is the timing of it. It's not your usual sort of late afternoon, early evening hours here. We're going to step through Futurecast by 2:30 in the morning, obviously not too many hours from now, what about 6-7 hours from now, we're seeing pretty quiet weather conditions here around the Mid-South, and that's going to be the case through the overnight hours. Worthwhile to note, if you want to go look at the lunar eclipse, the best time to view that is at about 2 o'clock in the morning here. Unfortunately, there will be some clouds nearby. I don't think it's going to completely diminish your ability to see it, but it's not going to be as ideal as, obviously, if we had clear skies around. Nonetheless, temperature is really not getting all that chilly tonight. Lower 60s and upper 50s. Our overnight lows tonight, they're going to be very similar actually to what our average high should be for this time of the year. But here we go throughout Friday. There will be some clouds around to get the day started, but I think they'll clear out And then notice by 2:30, we're starting to see some clouds moving from the west to the east here. Those will continue to kind of march on in, but we don't really necessarily see showers or storms around even by 7:30 in the afternoon. I think after this is when we will start to see those showers and storms fire up here, and that is when we have to start to keep an eye on things as far as really from sunset through about 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. And I know that's a pretty big window. It's about a 10-hour window there. There's an emphasis between about 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. from Friday night into Saturday morning that we're really keeping an eye on here. And it's these little small thunderstorm cells that are going to pop up here and be able to grow vertically pretty quickly. And that's when you can start to see your issues with some larger hail, some stronger winds, and even tornadic storms that are a possibility here as far as that 10 p.m. Friday night to 5 a.m. time frame here on Saturday is looking. As far as we have for high temperatures, not counting in anything else, it is going to be awfully warm and awfully breezy here throughout the Mid-South. Look at those afternoon highs. 84 for Covington, 84 for Brownsville, 80 for Memphis, 78 in West Memphis, 78 in Marianna, and 80 degrees in Marks, Mississippi. Keep in mind, our average highs this time of the year should be in the lower 60s, so we are going to be 15 to 20 degrees above average. Southerly winds at 20 to 25 miles per hour. Yeah, no surprise. There is a wind advisory in place for all of West Tennessee and into Northeast Arkansas. This kicks in at, I can't remember, I believe it's 10 in the morning here on Friday. It's either 10 or 11 in the morning on Friday. I'm pretty sure it's 10. And it's set to expire at 1 a.m. on Saturday. So this is in place here for a good, 13 hours or so. Good idea as noted. Download that WMC First Alert Weather app here. It's one of the great tools to have on standby here, especially if we do have to do any sort of cut-ins or weather alerts or things like that. This is going to give you First Alert, hence the name. As far as what we have going on here for Saturday, it's very location dependent because yet again, we're looking at this red area that does include Birmingham, over towards Jackson, Hattiesburg, down to the south, even New Orleans. That is where you have your moderate risk of severe weather here. Into the area that's in orange, this includes Atlanta, over towards Middle Tennessee, such as Nashville, down to the southwest here, including Corinth, as well as Oxford, Mississippi, over towards Batesville, and then down to the south. That is where there is an enhanced risk of severe weather. And then finally, if we look at this yellow area, which does include the Memphis metro, that's where there's a slight risk. And just outside of that, there's a marginal risk of severe weather. The thing I want you to kind of really notice, look at how tight all these are as far as going from a marginal risk to a moderate risk of severe weather. We're talking about going from Jonesboro to Tupelo pretty much, which I think we'd all agree. That's not too far of a drive. You could get from, Jonesboro to Tupelo, I'd say in the span of about 4 hours or so. And that's where we're going to go from just a marginal risk of severe weather, which is still something you do want to take seriously, to that moderate risk of severe weather. And there's a big difference there as to what you could and couldn't see here. If you live in northern Mississippi, especially northeast Mississippi, we're talking over towards Corinth. If you're over into Bolivar, which I know that's in Tennessee, but still just want to point that out. Ripley, Mississippi, over towards Oxford. If you're over into Marshall County, Tupelo yet again. This is going to be, I think Saturday's really the day you want to keep an eye on here. And the thing about this, let's just keep this full, Lydia, for the time being. Let's bring us back up here. As far as what we have going on here, the Storm Prediction Center, who yet again kind of issues these, they are kind of noting or moving all these back to the northwest, if anything. I did actually say this to meteorologist Patrick Ellis as well as chief meteorologist Ron Childers. I wouldn't be surprised actually if Memphis gets placed under an enhanced risk of severe weather here as far as Saturday goes. So that would mean we'd be going from the yellow rather, to that orange. So don't be surprised if this does kind of backdoor itself a little bit here around the Mid-South. I will say that that is a speculation aspect of things, but there's been a trend with that here, and I do want to note that. Okay, so let's talk more about that overnight time frame from Friday into Saturday. So what we're looking at here is at 2:30 in the morning on Saturday. Obviously, a lot of people are asleep. That's why you want to make sure you do have the notifications on here as far as the First Alert Weather app goes, and have your NOAA weather radio on standby. So this way, if you do get an alert, it's able to wake you up because you want to stay safe. There isn't anything necessarily too impressive as far as Futurecast goes here, as far as 2:30 in the morning. But these little rogue and discrete cells are going to pop up here, and that's where your issues really could start to arise as far as Saturday morning is concerned. You see Futurecast does have some of those around here for 6 o'clock in the morning as well for Saturday. I do think by that point we will actually start to see the threat simmer down just a little bit. There's going to be a little bit of a lull here between about 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. in the morning on Saturday. By the time we roll towards noon, we start seeing more of these showers and storms fire up. And notice down to the southeast here, especially getting closer to Tupelo and over towards Huntsville, Alabama. you start seeing more of these reds and oranges pick up here, indicating some heavier rain. But I also think we'll see some hail within there, the possibility of some tornadoes, and some really strong winds as well. So we're going to have all elements of severe weather around here as far as Saturday goes around the Mid-South. By 6 p.m., I do think we will start to see these sort of clear out of the region, especially the bulk of the storms. Notice over towards Middle Tennessee, Nashville, points east, we start seeing more of those reds embedded with the heavier storms around. But I still think we could get a little bit of residual shower activity here through the evening hours on Saturday. You see Futurecast kind of moving those on out. By the time we roll towards 11:30 in the morning on Sunday, our temperatures are going to take quite a nosedive. Remember, on Friday, we're going to be in the lower 80s. Sunday morning, we're talking about some 50s here. So it's going to be a big-time difference as far as our temperatures go here over the next few days. As far as the outlook goes with some of the specific things, so damaging wind we really do think is the thing that has the best or the highest risk around the Mid-South here, and we literally have that into that high range there. For heavy rain and hail, we have that in the medium range, and for the tornado risk, that's in the low range here. I will note with that tornado risk, I think there's a better chance it is going to pop itself into that medium risk more than going back down. So that is certainly something to be aware of here, and obviously your first alert with respect to that here, because even if you do see a low risk, that still is a risk. That's not. We have this on a scale of 1 to 5 here. That's at the 2, so it's definitely not a low. It's not a minimal risk. It is that low risk, but still something to keep an eye on. Those straight line winds, though, and the winds that come out of those thunderstorms, as far as being that high risk, that is the thing to keep an eye on here. Don't forget, too, as far as those winds go, typically they'll engulf a larger area than that of a tornado here. If you get some of those winds really rushing out, they'll cover miles of land here, as opposed to a tornado being a relatively smaller thing. But obviously, tornadoes can be quite destructive, too. We have obviously seen that here around the Mid-South. So the moral of the story here, we have that first alert weather day around for Friday during the PM hours with an emphasis really after sunset. And then again on Saturday here, really with an emphasis after 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So, Lydia, the way that I'm kind of looking at this here is that we are going to see the weather around the Mid-South maybe not necessarily be the best here from Friday night to Saturday, and then again late Saturday morning into Saturday evening here. And there's a lot going on here around the Mid-South in anticipation of St. Patrick's Day, and obviously here at Action News 5 with the Grizzlies game coming up. I know a lot of people are obviously excited about that. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed that the weather doesn't get too crazy here around the Mid-South. But reality is that we could, and I don't want to say likely, we'll see some strong and severe storms around the Mid-South, but the potential is there. The ingredients are there. Let's just pretend that this is a microwave. This is a microwave. We got the leftovers that are heating up in there, that could heat up in there. Nobody's hit that power on button yet. And until somebody hits that power button, you can't do anything about it. You still got cold leftovers in there. So hopefully that helps here. We got some questions. How are we doing in the world, the book, and everything else?
Let's take a look.
Sure.
Excuse me, what we got?
And if you're looking for specific towns and cities, I will say this is a very broad statement. To the south and east, Saturday's more your day. To the north and west, I'd say more so Friday night, but technically early Saturday morning is more your time frame here.
Well, we have one question from Stacy Little. She just wants to know, how is it looking in Panola County? I know you did cover, a part of that area, which is in our broadcast area, but I was wondering if you could give a little insight for her.
The mean streets of Panola, well, I guess not streets per se, but Panola County, let's get into the meat and potatoes of that. I do think that Saturday is more your day in Panola County than anything else. And if we look at the 3-day outlook here, notice that Panola County is within that enhanced risk of severe weather. And actually, you're in that enhanced risk of severe weather between both Friday and Saturday. But keep in mind that Friday risk is more so during the overnight hours and technically early on Saturday morning. The thing about the SPC, the Storm Prediction Center, with these outlooks is that they kind of run through 7 a.m. on a given day. So they kind of repeat at 7 a.m. They go from 7 a.m. on day 0 to 7 a.m. on day 1. So it's the timing of this kind of throws it off here as far as these different risk levels go. But for Panola County, the vast majority of it is within that enhanced risk of severe weather. And I say the majority just because there is a small little cranny into northwestern Panola County that is within that slight risk of severe weather here. Hey, we certainly don't want to forget about, the folks that are, say, outside of Memphis and over to some of those smaller communities. One thing that I've been really trying hard to do here, the weekends that I work, take the old storm tracker out on some of these really great days of weather, go explore and see what we got going on here across the Mid-South. And just check out the area because, hey, who doesn't like to see the storm tracker on? And quite frankly, from my standpoint, it helps me get to know these different communities that are around the Mid-South a little bit quicker and a little bit better, too. I've been able to take that to some really cool places thus far and hoping to continue to do that here with some tamer weather and nicer weather, hopefully on Sunday. But overall, Lydia, this is, I think for our Mississippi friends, The day to really keep an eye on is going to be on Saturday. And especially in those areas that are further to the southeast, the closer you are to Tupelo, the bigger of an issue you could potentially have here as far as Saturday goes. What we have going on here as far as, yet again, Futurecast, kind of looking at the evolution of that through Saturday. Notice by noon, we are seeing some of those bigger showers and storms off to the south and to the east here. And some of those do even approach Jackson, Tennessee. But what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. So with Futurecast, the thing that's kind of cool is that we could kind of bring it half hour by half hour here. And notice between about 3 to 4 o'clock, we're seeing some pretty nasty storms here into Tupelo, over into Benton, Tippah, Alcorn, and McNairy counties, and just throughout the Tennessee River Valley here during those afternoon and even the early evening hours on Saturday. So as noted, there's 2 time frames that I'm really kind of keeping an eye on here. Is from 10 p.m. on Friday through about 5 a.m. on Saturday. Get a little bit of a lull, and I do mean a little bit of a lull, between about 5 a.m. on Saturday to 10 a.m. on Saturday. But then things start to ramp back up between 10 a.m. on Saturday to about 5 p.m. on Saturday. So it's not necessarily 2 lines of showers and storms that we're worried about here, because the stuff from Friday night into Saturday, it's going to be these little storms that just kind of pop up. We got to just turn that microwave on. That's going to ignite some of those storms. So it's going to be quite the interesting couple of days here, Lydia. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. The biggest thing, we want everybody to be safe. And trust me when I say, we don't want to do cut-ins because the emails that we get and the phone calls.
We don't want to interrupt your shows, I promise.
Yes, we can definitely confirm that here.
But we want to make sure everybody's safe.
More than anything else.
Yes.
That's such a big thing here. So we got any other questions coming up there on social media?
I think you actually might like these questions, Eric. So Gabriel and Alex are kind of bouncing off of each other with the same kind of topic. So they're asking, is the tornado risk on the lower end due to the cap or lack of forcing? And off of that, Gabriel wants to know, is there a chance the cap may stabilize the atmosphere for us?
Now we're talking my
this
language.
This is not my language. It is yours. That's why.
Okay, so
tell us about it.
The cap certainly can help us out here as far as the Mid-South goes. And if you're not too sure what a cap is, it's pretty. Just imagine literally putting a hat on over your head. If you have a hat on over your head, you can't really exactly get anything over the top of your head. So that cap literally acts like a roof and doesn't allow things to have vertical development. In order to get some of these really strong and severe thunderstorms here, doesn't make a difference where you're at. They need to have vertical development here. If you have that cap, it eliminates, it literally just cuts off the top of these storms and doesn't allow them to happen. But once you get one storm that breaks through that cap, all of a sudden, you start getting more and more of them to kind of break through the cap because you've been able to break through that foundation essentially here. And that's one of the reasons why Friday night into Saturday, we don't necessarily have as high of an outlook per se, or as great of a chance of some of those storms becoming really strong and severe, because we do think that there will be a cap around, and there's a certain amount of dry air that will be overhead too as far as the Mid-South goes. So that could prevent us from necessarily seeing those tornadoes or the really strong storms here. Now there is going to be more moisture around here as far as Saturday during the day and the late morning into the afternoon hours is concerned. So once we kind of see that cap break, and we do think that's probably going to happen here at some point on Saturday, that's when things can really take off here. The good news is, at least about the Saturday late morning into the afternoon threat, just talking specifically about the Mid-South here, it does look like the worst of the storms, and we could still see some pretty nasty storms here across the Mid-South. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I do think they will be a little bit further to the south and to the east. We're talking more Jackson, Mississippi, and over towards the Birmingham area. So that's obviously something between myself for the rest of this evening. Meteorologist Patrick Ellis starting at 4:30 tomorrow morning. Heck, I know Patrick. He's probably already looking at stuff now. We'll continue to look through stuff the rest of tonight. And Chief Meteorologist Ron Childers will be keeping tabs on everything here and just communicating back and forth with each other because, Lydia, we were talking about it as far as just making sure we're fully staffed here in regard to this event going on. And I know our schedule between myself, Ron, and Patrick, it's all over the place here. But, hey, we want to keep everybody safe, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, do we have time for one more question, you think?
Absolutely.
We'll do one more. And if you still have questions, feel free to leave them, and we'll do our best to go back and try to answer those for you. But, of course, stay tuned tonight. We'll have the latest tonight at 10.
And I will say, as far as at actionnews5.com/weather, I made a weather video here that was after our 5 o'clock newscast. I believe it's about an 8-minute video. Should help answer some questions there. But what you got for that last question?
Okay. Jeremy wants to know, will the moderate risk expand south?
So I'm going to assume, Jeremy, you are talking about the Friday risk here. Let me dive back over to that as far as it's known as a day 2 risk, but it's kind of weird how it works out here as far as day 1, day 2. I'm stalling here so this way this can load. So I'm going to assume you're talking about this day 2 risk here, which we're talking about Friday, and he's talking about this moderate risk that is. I like looking at where things are centered or what towns or cities are centered when it comes to these risks, and it looks like really kind of St. Louis is in the middle of that moderate risk here. It is possible this could slide a little bit to the south. I don't think that is going to happen. Stranger things obviously have happened before. Worthwhile to note, these updates, they usually come here at about 12:30 at night, so I guess technically 12:30 in the morning, although they kind of get staggered out as far as day 1, day 2, day 3. So they will come in the very, very, very early morning hours of Friday. I don't really think that'll drop south. If it did, I would be a little surprised about that. I think we're going to stay implanted, though, in this enhanced risk as far as this goes here. If anything, I think they might slide this a little bit to the east if they were to drop it either way. But, yeah. Now, going back to that day 3 outlook I was talking about here, once you start seeing these really tight together here, as far as just the different colors and just the different outlooks go, that's where the Storm Prediction Center, in my opinion at least, are saying, okay, we have a pretty good confidence here in the areas that are within red. So yet again, for Jackson, Mississippi, over to Hattiesburg, and even towards Birmingham. But closer to our neck of the woods, as I noted, traveling from Jonesboro to Tupelo, you can do that in the span of 4 hours. And I don't want to undershoot that so this way somebody doesn't say I'm speeding out there. I don't think I've done that drive either yet. But look at how tight it is from Tupelo up to Jonesboro. You're talking about going from a level 4 to a level 1 within the distance of, what, about 150, 200 miles here. So that's a pretty small area to have that big of a difference as far as our severe weather risk goes. But as noted, I do think this has the possibility here of spreading further to the northwest. So it wouldn't shock me tomorrow morning when you wake up and meteorologist Patrick Ellis is at it, if this enhanced risk is a little bit further to the northwest and everything kind of gets bumped up or bumped back to the northwest a little bit. So he'll be giving you those latest and greatest updates, as I said, starting here at about 4:30. So Lydia, I gotta say, this is going to be a interesting little storm system that we have ahead here. Is really 2 rounds. You have the one from Friday night and the Saturday that there's a lot of disagreement as to what will and won't happen. I will say, especially for how close is it in time. But the one for Saturday during the late morning into the afternoon hours, there's actually a fair amount of confidence in that one here, especially just to the south and to the east, into northern Mississippi, especially northeast Mississippi here. And it's going to be interesting to kind of see the evolution of this.
Yes, and I want to note, because we've had people ask today if the St. Patty's Day parade at Silky Sullivan's is going to be canceled. We haven't heard anything. They haven't released anything, but we'll be sure to update the public if anything changes, because we know that's a
big event.
Yeah, it's a highly coveted event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same with the Grizzlies game. I don't think anything will change. But of course, if severe weather affects happenings this weekend, we'll be sure to bring it to you.
And keep in mind too, if you are flying, those winds are going to be hauling the mail here around the Mid-South. So it's going to be a pretty bumpy ride here. You might be able to get from A to B really quick because of those winds cruising, but it's going to be a bumpy ride. So, Lydia, I don't know about you. I think this does it for me here, especially. I can feel my throat starting to get a little dry.
Time for a bevy?
Yeah. It's 10:35 somewhere.
Well, yeah, that concludes it for today. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. And thank you to everybody watching.
Be well. Have a good night.